Good morning. How are you doing today? Oh. Mm, mm, mm. I just absolutely love coffee. Not as much as my wife, and definitely not as much as I love God, but kind of sad to say it ranks in the top 10. I don't know. Anyway, coffee is good. Coffee is great. But it has its purpose, and it has its place to be, and it has its place to not be. Um, you drink too much coffee, you get jittery, or you do start to do damage to your body. It's much like anything else that has to be taken in moderation, except for one thing, and that's a faith in Jesus Christ. That should never be done in moderation. That should always be like a good cup of coffee, bold, but never getting weak or old or stale. Need to keep it fresh. I don't know where I'm going with that. Anyway, today I'm going to be reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verses 27 through 33. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others say you're one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them to not tell anyone about him. He began to teach them about how the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and rise after 3 days. He spoke about this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. And at this he turned around, and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan! You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." This is one of those passages that just completely blows my mind because it's like a complete journey. I could sit here and easily dwell on this for a week, probably even a month, even longer, if I really put my mind to it and really studied, these few verses here. So what's going on here? I think at this point in his ministry, Jesus wants to know what people think about him, and more importantly, he wants to know what his disciples thinks about him, because he knows that the arc of his ministry was coming to an end, and he wanted to know what was going to be said about him after he was gone. Are his disciples ready? He's been priming them and getting them ready, and this is kind of, I see that, I could be wrong. I'm no great master theologian, but this seems to be like a turning point. And so he wants to know what other people are saying about him, but more importantly, I think he wants to know what the disciples are going to say. And Peter boldly steps up and says, "You are the Christ." Now, Peter ends up being given the keys to the kingdom. He's left the leader. But yet here in this section, Jesus calls him Satan. And I think that's kind of important as I reflect on this. No matter how good I try to be, I still have the propensity for evil. And Satan still has the opportunity to sway me and dwell in my heart if I do not keep fast to Christ and his ways. And he tells Peter to get behind him. Now, so Peter was I'm not going to wade too deep into the water here, but Peter was given the keys of the kingdom. He was going to be the first leader. And at the same time, he was flawed. So God's basically saying, yes, some of you I will put in charge, but even you are flawed, so keep check on one another. As a Catholic, we see Peter as the first pope. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to wade too deep in the water here, but that was one of the things that I thought was beautiful about Catholicism, is that going back and studying church history, the Catholic Church essentially, as we see it, began with those first 12 disciples, and it was handed down from generation to generation. Peter was essentially the first pope. Now, they didn't call him pope, but, and they didn't say, we're Catholics. It was around, I think, 50 AD. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert. But that's one of the things for me, people sometimes ask, because I've had kind of a wandering faith. I've kind of ping-ponged from here to there. And sometimes people are curious as to why I became Catholic. And for me, something was just missing. And the Catholic Church, not only was it rich in the sacraments, which I find absolutely beautiful, but for me, it had that history. And granted, the Catholic Church is flawed, just like any other church, and it's got its own set of problems and whatnot. But that was beautiful for me. I'm not judging, if you're not Catholic or you don't even have faith, I'm not judging you. That's not my job as a Catholic. I see that, in fact, Catholic means universal. And that was another thing that I thought was beautiful. But as a Catholic, I'm taught to not judge. I'm just called to share, read the Word, read about sacred tradition, sacred scripture, and share my faith in Jesus Christ. And that's why I'm doing here. Kind of rambling a bit, sorry. So, what I always ask is, how's this going to change my Thursday? Personally, I won't go into it. Personally, I've been on a rough journey lately. And it's amazing how you can be really strong in your faith and then things start to hit you. And so that's another thing that jumps out at me here, is because Jesus says, okay, you believe on the Christ, I'm going to have to be rejected and I'm going to suffer and I'm going to be killed. And Peter loves Jesus. He's like, no. But Peter doesn't realize that in saying, no, that's not going to happen, I'm not going to allow it, that he's allowing Satan to enter into his life, because Christ came as ransom for the sins of many, came for the ransom for the sin of you and for me and everyone else in humanity. That's a tough pill to swallow, and I'm sure it was tough for Peter, and that's why he stood up and he said what he did. So how's this going to change my Thursday? I got to go forward. And I got to be mindful that even when I think I'm in a good place, I still have the propensity for evil. And that I need to surround myself with the church. I need to surround myself with the community of believers to keep me in check, so that I continue to be a guiding light for other Christians in the church around the world. I love you very much. I'll be praying for you today. I'm going away on a retreat this weekend, and I will be speaking about being what it means to be a layman in the church. So please pray for me as well. And all the things that go on with daily life too. Sometimes we take for granted the little crises that happen in life. We focus on the big ones. So, I don't know. I'm rambling. That's all I got to say about that. Stop.